Welcome to Dreamy Detections. Thank you for choosing to spend your time in this peaceful sanctuary, a place designed for pure comfort and rest. This story is a gentle offering, created to help you release the day, find gentle contentment, and drift easily into a truly restorative sleep. We would be so grateful if you liked this story, subscribed for more peaceful tales, and perhaps left a kind comment to share your experience. Tonight, we will be visiting the quiet village of Silverspun, a place where the silence is as soft as a woolen blanket. Step into the world of its beautiful old library, a magical haven where the books themselves have a gentle life of their own. Let this journey provide a welcome respite, a moment of deep stillness, and a path to the calmest of dreams. Chapter 1. A Haven of Whispering Pages. Alistair arrived in Silverspun as the afternoon light was turning to gold, bathing the small village in a soft, ethereal glow. The air was still and carried the clean scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. He felt the hurried pace of his former life dissolve with each quiet step he took along the village's single winding lane. The cottages, with their thick wooden doors and windows filled with sleeping cats, seemed to be in a state of perpetual peaceful slumber. This deep quiet was what he had been searching for, a silence so profound it felt like a physical presence, a comforting blanket for the soul. The Silverspun Village Library stood at the end of the lane, a noble building of warm honey-colored wood and dark moss-dusted roof tiles. It looked less like a public building and more like a large, welcoming home. A heavy ancient oak door with an ornate iron keyhole awaited him. He turned the large brass key, and the lock opened with a satisfying, sonorous click. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing the sanctuary within. He stepped inside, and the comforting silence of the library enfolded him completely. The air smelled wonderful, a rich and complex perfume of aged paper, polished wood, and the faint, sweet trace of dried lavender. Towering shelves filled with books of every shape and size reached up to a vaulted ceiling where dark wooden beams crisscrossed in elegant patterns. Light, soft and diffused, poured in through tall arched windows, illuminating the space with a gentle radiance. A large stone hearth stood at one end of the main room, its mantel bare and waiting, and several large, deeply cushioned armchairs were arranged nearby, inviting quiet contemplation. It was a haven built from stories and silence. Alistair spent the rest of the afternoon in a state of quiet bliss, moving slowly through the stacks. He let his fingers trail along the varied spines of the books, feeling the smooth leather, the textured cloth, and the stiffened paper of their covers. He pulled a heavy volume from a shelf and opened it, breathing in its unique history. Each book felt like a small, sleeping world, and he, its new, gentle guardian. He found the card catalogue, a beautiful piece of furniture made of dozens of small wooden drawers, and pulled one open, listening to the soft rustle of the cards within. As evening approached, casting long, soft shadows across the floor, Alistair felt a profound sense of peace. This was more than a job. It was a calling he had found. He walked through the library one last time, ensuring every book was in its proper place on the shelves, a habit from his years as an archivist. With everything in perfect order, He walked to the entrance, pulled the heavy oak door closed, and turned the key. The finality of the sound echoed in the quiet evening air. He walked to his small cottage next door, his heart full of a deep and peaceful contentment. The next morning, he returned as the first rays of sun were beginning to slant through the tall windows. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, greeted by the same beautiful, comforting silence. The library was just as he had left it, a perfect sanctuary of peace. And yet something was different. His eyes were drawn to the large oak reading table in the center of the room. He was certain he had cleared it completely the evening before, stacking the books he had been looking at back on their respective shelves. Now, the table was home to a beautiful and curious arrangement. A collection of about a dozen books was laid out in a gentle, flowing arc that resembled a wave. He walked closer, his curiosity soft and wondrous. The books were all thematically linked, though from different sections of the library. One was a detailed atlas of the stars, another a book of poetry about the night sky, and a third a beautifully illustrated guide to nocturnal flowers. They were joined by books on gardening by moonlight and ancient tales of celestial navigation. He stood there for a long time, simply looking at the display. It was an artistic, thoughtful composition, a silent poem written in books. He ran a hand over the cover of the astronomy atlas, feeling its smooth, cool surface. He knew with an unshakable certainty that he had not created this arrangement. A gentle smile touched his lips. He felt no sense of unease, only a deep and pleasant sense of wonder. It seemed the library had a quiet, creative spirit all its own. Chapter 2. The Stories on the Shelves. Alastair quickly came to cherish the library's gentle, nocturnal creativity. The morning discovery of a new arrangement became the most wonderful part of his daily rhythm. He would unlock the great oak door with a sense of quiet anticipation, eager to see what silent story the library had decided to tell. He learned to observe these displays with a soft and appreciative focus, seeing them not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a gift to be received. The library was communicating in the only way it knew how, through the beautiful language of its collection. The arrangements were always harmonious and full of a quiet, gentle logic. One morning he found books on the art of letter writing placed beside volumes of famous correspondences and a small, delicate book about the symbolism of flowers. It was a perfect portrait of thoughtful communication. Another day, he discovered that books detailing the construction of wooden ships were nestled alongside novels of oceanic voyages and collections of sea shanties. The display evoked a palpable sense of adventure and the open water, all within the library's quiet walls. He began to feel as though he was in a gentle partnership with the building. He would leave a space clear on a particular shelf or table before he left each evening, an unspoken invitation. The library always seemed to accept, filling the space with a new, wondrous composition for him to discover in the morning light. The experience was deeply calming, a silent daily affirmation of the magic that resided within the library's warm wooden walls. His role was not to manage the library, but to appreciate it. One afternoon, seeking a different kind of warmth, he visited the village yarn shop, the Crimson Skein. The shop was a haven of color and texture, with skeins of soft wool stacked in beautiful rainbows on wooden shelves. Penelope, the owner, sat in a comfortable chair by the window, her knitting needles clicking with a soft meditative rhythm. She greeted Alistair with a serene smile. They spoke for a while in gentle tones, their conversation touching upon the changing leaves and the pleasant, crisp autumn air. Alistair, feeling a comfortable ease with Penelope, mentioned his appreciation for the library's unique character. He spoke of how the building seemed to have a life of its own. Penelope's smile deepened with a knowing warmth. "It has always been a knowing place," she said softly, her gaze distant for a moment as if recalling a fond memory. "When I was a little girl and felt sad, I would go to the library. Without me even looking for it, a book of cheerful stories would always seem to find its way to the edge of a shelf, right where I would see it." She looked at Alistair, her eyes kind and full of understanding. "The library looks after the village," she continued. "It gives people the stories they need, just when they need them." Her words were a simple statement of fact, a piece of accepted village lore that was as true and as natural as the rising of the sun. There was no need for explanation or proof. Her calm acceptance of the library's magic washed over Alistair, confirming his own feelings and dissolving any lingering questions he might have had. The wonder was simply a part of Silverspun. He returned to the library that afternoon with a renewed sense of connection to his new home. The world outside the library's arched windows was filled with people who understood and cherished its gentle secret. He was not alone in his appreciation of the marvel. He was part of a community that lived in quiet harmony with a gentle and wondrous magic. The knowledge filled him with a profound sense of peace and belonging. That evening, as he prepared to leave, he felt an impulse. He found a beautiful illustrated book about the art of weaving and spinning, its pages filled with intricate patterns and soft colors. He placed it by itself on the central reading table, a gentle offering, a silent thank you to Penelope and a greeting to the library. He locked the door behind him, his heart feeling light and full. The library was more than a building. It was a friend. Chapter 3. The Library's Gentle Hum. The partnership between Alistair and the library blossomed in the quiet days that followed. His gentle offering of the weaving book was met with a beautiful response. The next morning he found it resting in the center of a new display, surrounded by books on the history of sheep farming, natural dyes made from flowers, and collections of pastoral poetry. It was as if the library had taken his gift and woven it into a larger, more beautiful tapestry of stories. He felt a deep, affirming joy in this silent, creative exchange. He began to think of himself less as the librarian and more as a curator of the library's moods. He would spend parts of his day seeking out volumes that he felt would complement each other, books with beautiful covers, or on subjects that seemed to sing in harmony. He would leave these small collections out as gentle suggestions, and in the morning he would find them artfully integrated into the library's own grander designs. It was a quiet conversation, a shared artistic endeavor that filled his days with a sense of purpose and gentle wonder. As he spent more time within the library's walls, he started to become aware of its more subtle qualities. He noticed the way the dust motes danced in the afternoon sunbeams, shimmering with faint prismatic colors as if they were tiny living jewels. And he became attuned to the building's ambient sound. It was more than just silence. Beneath the quiet, he could perceive a soft, steady, and melodic hum. It was a low, resonant frequency that seemed to emanate from the very wood of the shelves, a sound like a person humming a deeply contented tune. This gentle hum became a source of profound comfort for Alastair. It was the library's resting heartbeat, a constant, soothing presence that wrapped around him like the softest blanket. When he was shelving books or sitting at his desk, the hum was a quiet companion. He found that if he closed his eyes and focused on the sound, his own breathing would naturally slow and deepen, matching the library's serene rhythm. The building was breathing, and it was teaching him to breathe along with it. He began to feel the library's contentment as a tangible force. The atmosphere within its walls was thick with a peaceful, positive energy. It was a place that felt inherently safe, warm, and nurturing. Visitors to the library seemed to feel it too. They would enter, and their shoulders would visibly relax. Their voices would soften, and they would move with a more deliberate, gentle grace. The library was a sanctuary that offered its profound calm to all who entered. One afternoon, Alastair decided to bring one of the library's large, comfortable armchairs closer to the hearth. He spent a quiet hour reading a book of fairy tales, his feet propped up on a small stool. The gentle hum of the library seemed to grow a little stronger, a little warmer, as if in approval. He felt a sense of being completely cared for, of being in a place that was actively looking out for his comfort and well-being. He was not just in the library, he was with the library. As he was preparing to leave that evening, he paused by the card catalogue. He placed a hand on its warm, smooth wood and felt the faint vibration of the library's hum under his palm. He listened closely and could hear the soft, whispering rustle from within its drawers, a sound like thousands of pages turning in unison. He smiled. The library was dreaming of all its stories, content in its haven of wood and paper. He was a part of that dream now, a happy character in its ongoing, peaceful tale. The deepening of his relationship with the library brought a new level of peace to Alastair's life. He felt grounded, connected, and deeply serene. His days were no longer just about organizing books. They were about participating in a slow, beautiful, and magical dance. He was a companion to a living, breathing house of stories, and the gentle hum of its happiness was the most beautiful music he had ever heard. Chapter 4. A Home Among the Tomes. Winter arrived in Silverspun softly, draping the village in a thick sound-absorbing blanket of white. The snow muted the world, deepening the profound quiet that was the village's signature. From the library's tall, arched windows, Alastair watched the gentle flakes drift down, each one a unique and perfect piece of frozen art. The library felt cozier than ever, a warm, glowing sanctuary against the cool, white world outside. The hearth was now a constant source of gentle warmth, its embers glowing like sleepy, watchful eyes. On one particularly quiet and snowy evening, Alastair decided to stay a little later than usual. The village was already settled for the night, and not a single footprint marked the fresh snow on the lane outside. He lit a few extra lamps, casting pools of soft golden light throughout the main reading room. With the snow falling silently outside and the fire crackling gently in the hearth, the library felt like the most peaceful place on earth. He felt no desire to leave its warm, safe embrace. He chose a book of winter poems from a shelf, its cover a deep and calming blue. He settled into his favorite armchair by the fire, pulling a soft woolen blanket over his lap. He began to read the poems aloud, his voice a quiet murmur in the vast silent room. He read of frosty branches, of sleeping animals in their burrows, and of the still, cold beauty of a star-filled winter night. His voice was the only sound, save for the gentle crackle of the fire and the soft, constant hum of the library itself. As he read, he felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the room. The air seemed to grow even warmer, the light from the lamps softer and more golden. The library's gentle hum deepened slightly in pitch, becoming a more resonant and embracing thrum. He felt a profound sense of being listened to, of sharing this quiet, beautiful moment with the spirit of the place. He was not reading to himself. He was reading to the library, and the library was listening with rapt attention. He continued to read for a long time, turning the pages slowly, his body completely relaxed in the comfortable chair. The puzzle of the moving books, which had once been a gentle curiosity, now felt completely and beautifully resolved within his heart. There was no complex reason, no hidden mechanism. The library was simply a place full of love for stories, a gentle and living soul that expressed its joy and contentment through the beautiful things it held. Its magic was the simple, profound magic of a happy home. When he finally finished the last poem, he closed the book and rested it on his lap. He looked up, his gaze sweeping slowly around the room, and then he saw it. The books on the tall shelves that encircled the hearth, the shelves closest to his reading chair, had moved. They had not formed an elaborate display on a table. Instead, they had simply shifted on their shelves, moving subtly to create a gentle, curving arc that perfectly framed his chair and the hearth. It was a soft, silent, architectural embrace. A tear of pure, quiet happiness welled in Alastair's eye. The library was holding him, cradling him in its wooden arms. In that silent, beautiful gesture, he felt a sense of welcome so profound it resonated deep within his soul. He was not the keeper, the guardian, or even the companion. He was a cherished resident. He was home. He had found his place not just in the village of Silverspun, but within the very heart of this magical, wonderful house of stories. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in peace, and Alastair sat in the warm, golden glow of the library, completely and utterly content.